want to talk to you about the importance of cadence. So cadence is something that I learned as I progressed in shooting competitive indoor archery. And what stood out to me was how hard it was to be as good as other people out there in this world of doing the same exact thing over and over and over and over again. It was actually a learning curve for me because when my career started, I was a 3D shooter. So I went out, and every time I shot a 3D course, I was in a new area. I was following a new trail. I was shooting a new target one time, pulling my arrow and moving to another target, and it looked different. So every shot was always different. And as I practice as a 3D archer, I practice as much on judging yardage as making shots. So I was just always moving to a new location to judge distance, make a shot, change location. So it was never repetitive. But what I learned was target archery just hones your skills and starts to like really show you what level you're at, because you are eliminating all of these variables and you're going with constants. You're going with a constant distance, you're going with a constant weather condition, you're going with a constant size target. You're not going from a large deer target to a turkey target to then shooting at a boar target. You're just driving tacks in this same spot. So it was hard for me to be good at it because I was distracted, and part of my body wanted variables. It wanted variation. It's kind of like, I grew up eating at a buffet and then all of a sudden got restricted to just having to eat the same thing every single meal, and it was driving me nuts. But what I realized was when I actually figured out how to break through the monotony is when I started to all of a sudden give myself a baseline of this is where you are. And guess what? Everybody else is up here. So how do I start to get to that level? So one of the things that I started doing, and there was two purposes to it, and actually a coach helped me with this, Lanny Basham. And he told me that part of my problem was I wasn't focusing on a cadence to occupy my conscious thought process to where I'm getting very rhythmatic. So by cadence, I'm talking about when you're shooting, practicing having your shots take about the same amount of time. So my rest between shots, my loading the arrow, putting my release on there, taking a quick rest, then deciding to make my shot, going through my shot routine, stance, grip, shoulder, anchor, peep, engage the trigger, pull and follow through. So when you start to have a cadence, and if you film yourself, I want you to go through and shoot 2 arrows, shoot 3 arrows, but I want you to start timing yourself as you watch yourself practice and see how much are you varying between when you decide to draw back on this shot and your shot actually breaks versus when you do it another time. If there's some shots where you're aiming for 5-10 seconds before your shot's going off, and then the next time you're aiming 20 seconds, or let's say by the time you move your thumb to the trigger, you're messing around trying to get this to feel right, you end up spending 15 seconds getting settled in before you ever make the shot. Well, you start to recognize, man, I have variation. And so what you want to start to recognize is if I'm expending past my time, maybe I should just cancel that shot and start to hold myself within this window. So I started shooting with a mantra in my mind to where as I'm going through my shot process and I'm coming into my peep and my fingers moving to the trigger, I'm actively starting my pull and trying to be dynamic, but I'm also saying a mantra in my head, which mine has usually been, I shoot X's because they make me feel good. And ideally, what's happening is as I'm silently saying that in my mind, my shots are normally breaking during the part of me saying, make me feel good. At some point during that, the shot's happening. Sometimes I may repeat it again and it may happen on the second time, but if I get to having to say it 3 times, I know I gotta cancel. So your goal is to watch yourself shoot, watch yourself practice, try to develop a cadence to where something that you say to yourself is allowing you to not jump on the trigger and make a shot happen in a certain amount of time, but you having a consistent and fluid movement all the time to where your trigger is activating because of your consistency with your cadence. So I'm going to go ahead and reset here. I shoot X's because they make me feel good. All right. I shoot X's because they make me feel good. The goal is to in no way make that shot happen, but your fluidity and your commitment to pulling through that is what makes that happen or lets that happen. I shoot X's because they make me feel good. All right, those were good shots. So let's come down. And obviously this is something that I could go back and review, but I want to be able to come down, think about those shots, and when you're doing that and you're developing that cadence, what you'll also learn is how important it is to recognize speed. So obviously I was a little bit dynamic at the beginning. I was pulling a little hard, probably pulling so hard that I pulled myself off the targets. Shot was going off a little quicker, so second shot, I made sure it was consistent. I made sure I was doing what I'm supposed to do, but I did it a little bit slower and it was more on pace. So what eventually happens, and this will translate over into the hunting world, there's been multiple hunts where people have watched and a deer's coming through fast and things happen fast and people ask, Dud, how are you telling me that you didn't punch the trigger for that? Because what I tell myself is, I got to shoot X's because they make me feel good. So I'm telling myself, you need to be fluid, but your cadence needs to turn the tempo up. So all I'm doing is committing to making the good shot, but at a higher BPM. So one thing you can do in addition to help you with learning cadence is find some tunes that are kind of at a fluid pace that help you get there. Although I like metal and I like hardcore music at times, there's times where I want to rock out, but there's also times where I want to chill out and work on my cadence. And during those times, I'm better off with something that's a little bit more consistent in beats. So for this round, once I'm acquiring peep and my pin gets to the target, I'm saying exactly what you heard me say last time. I'm saying it in my head. So for these last 2 arrows, I want you to kind of think of when my thumb comes to that trigger and I've committed to the shot. You say that mantra and see how my activation is happening and how my cadence is. I think that cadence was pretty freaking good. I felt good about it. And when I'm practicing here on my own, my shots are gonna happen a little bit faster. I mean, I shoot X's because they make me. Whereas in a hunting situation where I might need to slow things down, in a tournament situation, I may have to actually have that be a little bit slower, or naturally it will be a little bit slower. And I think if you stick to those guidelines, focusing on finding your cadence, and hey, come up with something more creative than mine. There's probably way better mantras out there. This one's just one I've never forgot, which makes it work for me. So good luck finding your cadence.